A gang of hardened racists think they've found an easy target when they corner a lone black man late at night. But they've made a fatal error. They have no idea he's a highly trained assassin. As the tables turn, their lives will never be the same. The night was unnervingly quiet, with only the distant hum of traffic and the occasional bark of a stray dog piercing the stillness. Elijah walked through a narrow alley, his footsteps echoing off the brick walls of abandoned buildings. He wore a black leather jacket, his hands tucked casually into his pockets, his expression calm and unbothered. To the untrained eye, he seemed like just another passerby, a man who wouldn't dare challenge trouble if it came his way. Trouble came in the form of 5 men. They stepped out from the shadows, blocking both exits to the alley. Their leader, a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head and a smug grin, adjusted the brass knuckles on his hand. Tattoos of swastikas and hateful slogans snaked up his arms, leaving no question about his beliefs. "Hey there, stranger," the leader sneered, his voice dripping with malice. "Out a little late, aren't you? Not the safest neighborhood for someone like you." The others chuckled, a sickening sound that reverberated off the walls. Elijah paused, his eyes scanning each of them with a calculated calmness. He didn't respond, simply pulling his hands from his pockets and resting them by his sides. "Oh, he's got nothing to say," one of the men taunted, cracking his knuckles. "You lost or something, boy?" Elijah didn't flinch. His gaze settled on the leader, his expression as unreadable as stone. Inside, he was already calculating: 5 men, 2 armed, 3 with visible weaknesses in their stances. They were amateurs, overconfident and sloppy. The leader's grin faltered for a split second. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue? Or are you just too scared to talk?" Elijah finally spoke, his voice low and steady. "You sure you want to do this?" The leader's laughter erupted, echoing through the alley. "Oh, I'm sure. You've got no backup, no way out, and no one to hear you scream." The gang tightened their circle around Elijah, closing the distance. One of them pulled out a switchblade, flicking it open with a flourish meant to intimidate. "Just give us your wallet and phone," he snarled. "Might save you some pain." Elijah tilted his head slightly, his hands still at his sides. "You should walk away. All of you." The leader scoffed. "Listen to him. Acting like he's got some kind of power here." He stepped closer, raising the brass knuckles. "You're outnumbered, pal. Time to teach you your place." But as the leader swung his fist, something unexpected happened. Elijah moved, fast, almost faster than the eye could follow. His hand shot up, catching the punch mid-air with a grip like steel. The leader's eyes widened in shock. "What the?" Before he could finish, Elijah twisted the man's arm, forcing him to drop the brass knuckles with a clatter. A sharp cry of pain escaped his lips as he stumbled backward. The gang froze, their laughter and bravado replaced with disbelief. "You picked the wrong man," Elijah said, his voice steady but laced with an undertone of menace. The others hesitated for a moment before charging at him. Elijah stood his ground, his body relaxed but ready. He knew this fight was far from over, and they had no idea what they were in for. The first man lunged at Elijah with the switchblade, the blade glinting under the dim alley light. Elijah sidestepped smoothly, catching the man's wrist with precision and twisting it sharply. The knife clattered to the ground as the attacker yelped in pain, clutching his now dislocated wrist. The second and third men charged together, their fists swinging wildly. Elijah ducked under their punches with an ease that bordered on effortless. He stepped into the first man's attack, using his momentum against him, and delivered a calculated elbow strike to his jaw. The crack of bone was audible, and the man crumpled to the ground, groaning. The third man hesitated, his confidence faltering. "Who the hell is this guy?" he muttered, his voice shaking. Elijah gave him no time to figure it out. He closed the gap between them with lightning speed, landing a series of precise strikes, a jab to the throat, a kick to the knee, and a final blow to the ribs that sent the man sprawling. The remaining 2 gang members exchanged nervous glances. Their bravado had evaporated, replaced by fear. One of them pulled out a chain, swinging it menacingly. The other grabbed a metal pipe from the ground, gripping it tightly with sweaty hands. "You think you're tough, huh?" The one with the chain barked, though his voice wavered. "We're gonna make you regret this." Elijah stood in the center of the alley, his expression calm and unreadable. "Last chance. Walk away." The man with the chain swung it, aiming for Elijah's head. Elijah dodged with ease, stepping into the attacker's space and grabbing the chain mid-swing. With a powerful yank, he disarmed the man, sending him stumbling forward. Elijah spun the chain around his fist and struck him across the face, dropping him instantly. The final man, holding the metal pipe, stood frozen. His knuckles were white as he gripped the weapon, but his resolve was crumbling. "Stay back," he shouted, his voice cracking. I'll do it." Elijah took a slow step forward, his eyes locked on the man's. "You don't want to do this." The man's hands trembled as he raised the pipe. "Stay away from me, man." In a blur, Elijah closed the distance, deflecting the pipe with his forearm and delivering a devastating punch to the man's solar plexus. The attacker dropped the weapon and fell to his knees, gasping for air. Elijah stood amidst the fallen gang members, his breathing steady, his movements still fluid and composed. He glanced down at the leader, who was clutching his injured arm and glaring up at him with a mix of pain and hatred. "You have no idea who you just messed with," the leader spat, his voice weak but defiant. Elijah crouched down, meeting the leader's gaze. "I told you to walk away. Next time, listen." The sound of sirens in the distance cut through the tension, growing louder with each passing second. Elijah stood, dusting off his hands, and turned toward the alley's exit. "You might want to tell the cops the truth," he said over his shoulder. "Because if I ever see you again, it won't end this easy." Without another word, Elijah disappeared into the shadows, leaving the gang battered, broken, and filled with regret. Elijah walked briskly through the back streets, his sharp hearing tuned to the distant sirens fading away. He knew they wouldn't find him. He'd lived a life that taught him how to vanish when needed. But the altercation stirred something within him, a pull toward a past he'd buried deep. Reaching his modest apartment on the edge of the city, Elijah locked the door behind him and leaned against it, taking a long, measured breath. His hands trembled slightly, though not from fear. He hadn't felt fear in years. This tremor was something deeper, something tied to the ghosts of his past. The room was sparsely furnished, reflecting the life of a man who valued utility over luxury. A single photograph sat on the worn coffee table, a young Elijah in military fatigues, standing proudly with a group of men who shared the same steely determination in their eyes. It was a time when Elijah had a purpose, a clear mission. As he stared at the photo, his mind wandered back to his years as a covert operative. The classified missions, the high-stakes infiltrations, and the haunting moments when he had to make decisions that no man should face. He'd been trained to be a weapon, honed to perfection by a government that valued results over humanity. But it was the mission in Eastern Europe that changed everything. His team had been betrayed, their identities exposed. Most of his comrades had perished in an ambush, and Elijah barely escaped with his life. That mission was the last straw. He left the agency, disappearing into obscurity, vowing to leave violence behind. Until tonight, the scuffle with the gang had awakened a side of him he'd fought hard to suppress. He was no longer the man who could walk away from danger without a second thought. He had intervened, not just out of instinct but because he couldn't stand by and let injustice go unanswered. As Elijah sat down, his phone buzzed on the table, pulling him out of his thoughts. It was a text from an old contact, someone from his past life who rarely reached out unless it was important. "Saw what you did tonight. You're still sharp. Careful, Elijah. People are watching." Elijah's eyes narrowed. His old life had a way of finding him, no matter how much he tried to distance himself. He typed a quick response, not looking for trouble. "Just handled a situation." The reply came almost instantly. "Trouble has a way of finding you. Be ready." Elijah set the phone down, his mind racing. Who had seen him? And what did they want? Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. It was firm and deliberate, sending a jolt of tension through Elijah's body. His training kicked in immediately. He moved silently to the side, avoiding direct sight lines from the peephole. "Mr. Miller?" A voice called out, a woman's voice, calm but authoritative. "I just want to talk." Elijah's jaw tightened. His neighbors only knew him as a quiet man who kept to himself, not by name. This was someone who had done their homework. "Who's asking?" he said, his voice steady but firm. There was a pause. "My name is Special Agent Harper. I think we can help each other." Elijah opened the door a crack, enough to see the woman standing there. She was dressed in plain clothes, but her demeanor screamed law enforcement. She held up a badge for him to see, then slowly lowered it. "Help each other with what?" Elijah asked, his tone skeptical. Agent Harper's expression softened slightly. "With the gang you dealt with tonight. They're part of something much bigger, and you might have just kicked the hornet's nest." Elijah's eyes narrowed, his instincts already calculating the possibilities. "And why would I care about that?" Harper leaned in slightly, her voice dropping. "Because they care about you now. And they won't stop until they've settled the score." Elijah said nothing, his gaze locking onto hers, weighing her words. "Let me in, and I'll explain everything," Harper continued. "You're going to need more than your fists for what's coming." Reluctantly, Elijah stepped aside, allowing her into his world. Agent Harper walked into Elijah's modest apartment with a confident stride, her sharp eyes scanning the space. Her movements were deliberate, almost calculated, as if she were assessing more than just the room. Elijah closed the door behind her, crossing his arms as he leaned against the wall, watching her carefully. "Nice place," Harper remarked, her tone neutral. "Let's skip the small talk," Elijah said firmly. "You said the gang won't stop. Why? What's this really about?" Harper turned to face him, her expression serious. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder, laying it on the small coffee table. "The men you fought tonight aren't just a random group of thugs. They're part of an organized network, the Northside Blades. They've got ties to arms trafficking, drug distribution, and worse." "I don't care about their criminal resume," Elijah replied coldly. "They came after an innocent kid. I stopped them. End of story." Harper shook her head. "It's not that simple. They saw your face, Elijah. And now they're interested in you, not just for payback, but because they think you're a threat to their operations." Elijah's jaw tightened. He walked over to the coffee table, picking up the folder. Inside were photos of the gang members he had encountered, along with several others. One face stood out, a tall, heavily tattooed man with a scar running down his left cheek. His piercing eyes seemed to burn through the photograph. "Who's this?" Elijah asked, holding up the photo. "Marcus Kane," Harper said. "Leader of the Northside Blades. He's ruthless, smart, and unforgiving. Word is, Kane doesn't just want you dead, he wants to make an example out of you." Elijah set the photo down, his expression unreadable. "And where do you come in? You're not here just to warn me." "You're right," Harper admitted. "I've been tracking the Blades for over a year, trying to bring down their entire operation. But they're always one step ahead. That changes now, with you." Elijah let out a bitter laugh. "So, you want me to be your inside man? I'm not interested." Harper stepped closer, her tone softening. "This isn't just about you, Elijah. The Blades have destroyed lives, torn apart families. You have the skills to stop them, to protect others from what they've done. Isn't that what you wanted when you stepped in to save that kid?" Elijah's eyes flickered with a mix of anger and conflict. He turned away, staring out the small window. Memories of his past missions flooded back, the lives he saved, the ones he couldn't. The weight of it all pressed against his chest. "They don't deserve to get away with this," Harper added, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I can't do it alone." For a long moment, the room was silent. Then Elijah turned back to Harper, his gaze steady. "If I do this, we do it my way. No red tape, no politics." Harper nodded. "Deal. But first, we need to get you off their radar. Marcus Kane has already put a bounty on your head. The Blades will be hunting you down before sunrise. Elijah smirked faintly. Let them try. Harper shook her head. This isn't just about survival. We need to hit them where it hurts, fast and hard. If we don't, they'll keep coming after you and everyone else in their way. Elijah picked up the photo of Marcus Kane again, studying it with a sharp intensity. Where do we start? Harper smiled faintly, sensing his resolve. She pulled out a map and spread it across the table, pointing to several marked locations. These are their safe houses, supply hubs, and meeting spots. Take your pick. Elijah's eyes scanned the map, already formulating a plan. I hope you're ready, Agent Harper. This isn't going to be clean. She met his gaze, her expression resolute. Neither am I. As the night deepened, the two prepared for the storm that was coming, knowing that their alliance could be the one thing standing between justice and chaos. Elijah sat in the passenger seat of Harper's unmarked SUV as it navigated the shadowy streets of the city. The weight of the plan ahead hung in the air between them. Harper glanced at him, her hands steady on the wheel. You're sure about this safe house? Elijah asked, studying the map in his lap. It's their main supply hub, Harper confirmed. If we hit them there, it'll cripple their operations for weeks. Elijah folded the map and slipped it into his jacket. His expression was stone cold. Then we hit them hard and fast. The SUV pulled into an abandoned parking lot, surrounded by the decaying skeletons of warehouses. Harper killed the engine and motioned for Elijah to follow her. She popped the trunk, revealing a cache of weapons and gear. Take your pick, Harper said. Elijah grabbed a tactical knife, a handgun, and a lightweight vest. You brought this much firepower? He asked, raising an eyebrow. I'm always prepared, Harper replied, slipping a rifle strap over her shoulder. You never know when things will go sideways. The two approached the safe house, a decrepit building with boarded windows and dim lights seeping through the cracks. Elijah motioned for Harper to stop as he scanned the perimeter. Two armed guards loitered near the entrance, smoking and chatting. Stay here, Elijah whispered. Before Harper could protest, Elijah disappeared into the shadows. He moved like a ghost, silent and calculated. Within seconds, he was behind the first guard, a swift arm around the man's neck until he slumped to the ground. The second guard turned, too slow to react as Elijah's fist connected with his jaw, dropping him instantly. Harper approached, her rifle at the ready. Impressive, she said softly. Let's keep moving, Elijah replied, motioning for her to follow. Inside, the safe house was a maze of crates, makeshift offices, and dimly lit corridors. Voices echoed from deeper within, a mix of laughter and heated arguments. Harper pointed to a room where several gang members were counting money and packaging drugs. We take out their supplies and their morale, she whispered. Elijah nodded, formulating a plan. He crept toward the room, Harper covering his back. Within seconds, the room erupted into chaos. Elijah's precision was unmatched, every move deliberate, every strike calculated. Harper provided cover fire, her aim flawless. The gang members didn't stand a chance. Some fled, but most were left incapacitated, their supplies destroyed in the chaos. As the dust settled, Elijah and Harper regrouped in the hallway. That was just the warm-up, Harper said, catching her breath. Elijah wiped the blood from his knuckles, his expression grim. They'll know we're here now. Expect backup any second. Right on cue, the sound of roaring engines filled the air. Elijah and Harper exchanged a look before sprinting toward an exit. They're here, Harper shouted, firing at the approaching gang members. Elijah grabbed a pipe from the ground, using it to disarm and disable the first attacker who reached them. The two worked in perfect sync, Harper's cover fire complementing Elijah's brutal hand-to-hand combat. After a grueling fight, the remaining gang members retreated, their morale shattered. Elijah leaned against a wall, breathing heavily. This isn't over, Harper said, reloading her rifle. Elijah nodded. Let them come. We're just getting started. The hideout of the Blades was eerily quiet as Elijah and Harper made their way to the upper levels. The fight outside had taken its toll on both of them, but there was no time to rest. They were in the lion's den now, and the next moments would determine everything. The duo reached a heavy steel door at the end of the dimly lit hallway. Harper paused, listening closely. Muffled voices came from the other side. "They're in there," Harper whispered. Elijah nodded, his hand tightening around the knife he'd picked up earlier. "This is their stronghold. We take them down here, it's over." Harper pulled a flashbang from her belt and held it up. "Ready?" Elijah positioned himself by the door, his muscles taut. "Do it." The flashbang rolled into the room, its sharp pop followed by a blinding light and deafening noise. Harper and Elijah stormed in, their movements precise and lethal. Inside, the gang's leaders scrambled to recover, their weapons drawn too late. Elijah moved like a shadow, disarming one man and taking him down with a swift kick to the chest. Harper's rifle barked as she expertly picked off another who had reached for a shotgun. The gang leader, a hulking man with tattoos creeping up his neck, roared in anger. "You think you can come into my house and take me out?" Elijah stepped forward, his voice calm but deadly. "Your house? It's nothing but a cage you've built for yourself." The leader lunged at Elijah, swinging a metal pipe. Elijah dodged with ease, his counterstrike landing squarely on the man's ribs. The sound of cracking bones echoed in the room. Harper stayed on the periphery, covering Elijah while keeping an eye on the remaining gang members. "Elijah, more coming up the stairs." She called out. Elijah threw the gang leader to the ground, his foot pressing into the man's chest. "Call them off," he commanded. The leader coughed, a twisted grin spreading across his face. "You'll never stop us." Elijah leaned closer, his voice icy. "You're already stopped." With a single punch, he knocked the leader unconscious. Harper tossed him a set of zip ties, which Elijah used to secure the man. The reinforcements burst into the room, but Harper was ready. She fired a warning shot, forcing them to halt. "Drop your weapons, or your boss gets it." The gang members hesitated, exchanging nervous glances. Slowly, they obeyed, their weapons clattering to the ground. Minutes later, the sound of sirens filled the air. Harper had managed to send a distress signal during the chaos, and the police were closing in. Elijah turned to Harper, his expression serious. "It's over." Harper smirked. "For now. But if they crawl out of the woodwork again, you know who to call." The two stepped out into the cold night air, the chaos behind them giving way to the flashing lights of police cars. If you were captivated by this intense showdown, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more gripping stories. Share this video with friends and let us know your favorite moment in the comments below. Your support keeps these stories alive. Thank you for watching this incredible story of courage and justice. If this kept you on the edge of your seat, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another gripping tale. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What was your favorite moment? Drop a comment below and join the conversation. And don't forget to share this video with friends and family to keep the energy alive. Together, we can spread these powerful stories far and wide.